You gonna come first together on stage or just okay? So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Elena Krawzow and Mr. Dr. Volker Klügel.
So is the microphone on? Yes, okay. So hello everybody. This session is about MDR and development NDR and about fun and enjoyment. And of course, this two in one sentence, that's leaning far out of the window because probably most of you will not experience fun and MDR in one sentence. So let us just introduce ourselves. This is Elena Krawzow, now Semechin, just married. And she's a Paralympic swimmer and really the expert for being winning with handicaps. Yeah. And I'm Volker Klügel. I'm the founder of IPP, and we're doing all the framework for medical device developers. So we provide the complete framework for regulatory or project development, so our customers can focus on their product, on their markets. So certainly, we will never get, there's one. We will never get MDR like this. It will never be fun like this, yeah, party. But maybe we get something else. And as I said, MDR feels a little bit like handicap. So today, I have with me Elena, and Elena is an Olympic champion, an European champion in 100-meter breaststroke, and she's almost blind. So she only can see 3%, as she puts it, or for us normal people, 97% nothing. So, but Elena is really the most wonderful and most positive person I know. So before I start with my part, I will hand over to Elena and give her the word from the first-hand experience of how to win despite all obstacles and all handicaps. So give a big hand for Elena, an applause. Elena will do her part in German.
Soll ich jetzt doch anfangen?
Yeah, no, just start.
Okay, also meinen normalen Vortrag.
Ja.
Okay. Hallo zusammen, Volker hat mich schon ganz nett vorgestellt. Elena Krawzow ist mein Name, jetzt Semechin. Ich erzähle euch ganz kurz was über mich, wo ich herkomme, wer ich bin und was ich so tue den ganzen Tag. Ich bin gebürtig aus Kasachstan. Ich bin in einem ganz kleinen Dorf im Süden geboren worden, an der Grenze zu Kirgisistan. Dann über einen kleinen Umweg über Russland sind wir nach Deutschland gereist sozusagen. Ich bin dann in Bamberg aufgewachsen. Und dann wegen meiner Sehbehinderung bin ich nach Nürnberg gekommen, wo ich auch den Volker kennengelernt habe. Er hat mich damals schon unterstützt. Das war quasi mein erster Sponsor. Da bin ich auch sehr, sehr dankbar für. Ja, deswegen sind wir immer noch bis heute in Kontakt und arbeiten sehr gut zusammen. Ich habe eine Sehbehinderung, das ist richtig. Inzwischen sind es aber nicht 3% Sehre, sondern nur noch 2%, weil ich eben eine stetig schlecht werdende Krankheit habe, die heißt Makuladystrophie. Und das hat mich dann eben zum Parasport gebracht. Angefangen habe ich damit in Nürnberg auf der Privatschule und bis heute mache ich noch Profisport. Inzwischen kann ich ganz gut davon leben, was mich sehr, sehr froh macht, aber das war natürlich kein leichter Weg. Ich wurde auch relativ schnell erfolgreich. 2012 gewann ich schon meine erste Medaille in London, Silber über 100 Meter Brust. 2015 bin ich dann nach Berlin gekommen, weil ich einfach für mich dort die besseren Chancen gesehen habe. Ja, in Berlin angekommen habe ich dann gemerkt, was eigentlich Profisport bedeutet. Ich trainiere ungefähr 10 bis 12 Mal in der Woche, etwa 6 bis 8 Stunden am Tag. Also viel Zeit bleibt da leider nicht mehr übrig. 2016 waren die Spiele in Rio, leider für mich nicht ganz so erfolgreich. Da habe ich zum ersten Mal gemerkt, was eigentlich mit am wichtigsten ist, und zwar das mentale Training. Ja, dann habe ich alles dafür gemacht und gesetzt, dass ich in Tokio erfolgreich bin, denn mein Ziel war es immer, Gold zu holen. Gold war eigentlich das Einzige, was für mich zählt. Nachdem ich Europa- und Weltmeisterin geworden bin, hat mir nur noch das gefehlt. Ja, in Tokio dieses Jahr, es wurde ja aufgrund von Corona leider verschoben, habe ich das dann endlich nach 10 Jahren harter Arbeit geschafft, meinen Wunsch zu erfüllen und Paralympics-Siegerin zu werden, was mich natürlich bis heute beflügelt und ja, unfassbar glücklich macht. Das war eine Riesenlast, die mir von den Schultern gefallen ist. Dann zu Hause angekommen in Berlin, war ich auf Wolke 7 voller Glücksgefühle und Emotionen, hat mich aber mein Kopfschmerz sehr geplagt und ich wusste nicht, was das ist. Das hat auch einfach nicht aufgehört. Zwischen meinen ganzen Reisen habe ich dann gedacht, ich gehe mal zum Arzt und lasse das mal checken. Ja, dann komme ich zum Arzt rein und bekam die Diagnose, da stimmt irgendwas nicht im Kopf, Sie brauchen noch eine Untersuchung. Am nächsten Tag kam dann Diagnose Tumor im Gehirn. Das hat mich natürlich von Wolke 7 auf den Boden aufgeklatscht. Ich war völlig fertig, habe natürlich ein paar Tage gebraucht, um das zu verarbeiten. Aber dann, nach ein paar Tagen, habe ich mir gedacht, warum muss man alles hinterfragen und sagen, ja, warum habe ich das? Warum habe ich die Sehbehinderung? Warum habe ich jetzt einen Tumor? Ist halt so. Man muss denken, was bringt mir das? Und im Nachhinein habe ich gedacht, hätte ich die Sehbehinderung nicht, dann wäre ich auch nicht beim Parasport gelandet und wäre vielleicht gar nicht so erfolgreich und hätte die ganze Welt nicht gesehen. Und so war das dann auch mit dem Tumor. Ich dachte, ja, die Situation ist beschissen, aber nach der OP bin ich aufgewacht, der Professor hat eine tolle Arbeit gemacht, der Tumor ist raus und ich bin immer noch dieselbe Elena geblieben. Ganz im Gegenteil sogar, ich war noch glücklicher, ich war noch zufriedener und dankbarer, dass ich leben kann. Dankbarer, dass ich jeden Morgen aufstehen kann, laufen kann, reden kann und immer noch mit Menschen zu tun haben kann, ohne dass ich irgendwelche neurologischen Ausfälle habe. Ja, das hat mich nochmal geprägt. Und ich denke, alles, was bei uns im Leben als Schwierigkeit erscheint, kann uns eigentlich nur stärker machen, kann uns für noch Schlimmeres vorbereiten und einfach nur zeigen, dass man dankbar sein kann für das Leben, das man hat. Und nicht fragen, ja, warum habe ich denn so ein Leben, wie ich ihn habe? Und das wünsche ich euch auch, dass ihr mit euren Kollegen einfach glücklich seid. Ich hoffe, dass wir uns vielleicht irgendwann nochmal sehen. Ich würde gerne noch für einen längeren Vortrag kommen und von meinem Leben berichten, wenn ihr Interesse habt. Ich habe meinen Manager dabei. Ansonsten wünsche ich euch ganz viel Spaß bei dem Vortrag und vielen lieben Dank fürs Zuhören.
Ja, vielen Dank, Elena. Wir wünschen dir ganz viel Zuversicht weiter und viel Erfolg und hoffentlich in Paris 2024 wiederzusehen und wieder auf dem Treppchen. Ja, da werden wir ganz begeistert dabei sein.
Vielen Dank.
Zur Überleitung. Many people of you will ask yourself, is MDR a handicap? And of course, often it feels like this, yeah? Daily frustration. But this is not the topic of the day. I came up here to speak about MDR and fun. And to go this way, let's just look at the fun part and how we can achieve this. As I said before, of course, it will never be fun like this, yeah? No pure laughter and drinking beer, meeting people. Of course, we know MDR needs skill. And everybody of us knows if you learn something new, like skiing, you feel like this guy. You're in the snow and the slope is too steep and it's no fun at all. Yeah? It's real pain. And that's not all. Yeah? It's getting foggy and it feels even worse. And that's not all. It's getting dark, and you get more frustrated and more obstacles, and you start really hate skiing. Everybody knows this feeling. If you start something new and things don't go out, you start hating it. And for some of us, MDR feels like this at the moment. It's new, and it's foggy. and we start hating it. But everybody of us knows that if the sun is out and it's bright and you know what you do, it really feels great. Yeah, it's wonderful, and you have the balance between skill and difficulty, and this special balance has a word, and that's flow. And the idea of this session is make MDR a flow, and I will lead you through this idea in the next minutes. So how does flow work? Flow is the balance between difficulty and capability and your skill. So if you're very skilled, you can deal with a lot of difficulty. And that has to be in balance. If the difficulty is too high, you're frustrated. If the difficulty is too low, you're bored. So of course, nobody is bored with the MDR at the moment. So we look at the difficulty side. Of course, we cannot change MDR, so we have to work on our skill level. There are 8 elements of flow, and it's not that I came up with this. That's a theory brought up, and that's the master of flow, and that's Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Well, that's how you pronounce him. I would just refer to him as Mihai, so that's easier. And he came up with this flow principle. It's 8 principles. First principle, it's the clarity of goals. Yeah? And he says, you see this in many sports and arts, and I read this, the rules are clear. In every action, success or failure is immediate. And that's especially for sports and arts. What's the goal with MDR? Is there no goal? No. There are 2 very clear goals with MDR. Your medical device has to be safe and effective. So that's important. So you really have to make sure your medical device does what the intended use is proposing to. And you have to make that sure, and yourself and your team have to be convinced that your medical device is doing what it's intended to. And of course, it has to be safe. And that also has to be very clear. And that's the basics, what MDR is about. You have to prove your device is effective and safe. So bring this to your team, make sure that everybody knows, and you know yourself. Yeah? We sometimes speak to customers, and they're not even sure themselves if the device will work. And you ask them questions, and they have no explanation. The MDR is in a way like this: if you're not sure about your device, just stop development, do something else. You will never be happy with MDR. You have to set the goals right. The second, Mihai says, to get a flow feeling, you need a high level of focus. And he says, this allows a person's consciousness to delve deeply into the activity. In contrast, there's often chaotic and contradictory demands in daily life, which may cause confusion and dissatisfaction. And we all know this, yeah? That's our daily life. Confusion, contradiction. So if you want to go ahead with MDR, you need dedicated people. You need people who really can dive into the topic and really get away from the daily business and do their job on what they have to do. Otherwise, there will no satisfaction, not in the forest, no feeling of flow or fun. Of course, as I mentioned before, there's the balance between skills and challenge. The difficulty of a task has to provide the right degree of challenge to the person's ability. So we cannot change how difficult MDR is. So there's only one choice. We have to enable people. We have to raise the skill level of our people. And of course, every developer has to know his product or her product. And this also includes standards, product standards. Yeah? Often, when I see developers, they're very convinced about what they do, about inventing things, but they don't care about standards. And of course, standards are a very big part of product development. Yeah? If you use a M8 screw metric, you have to rely that it's a M8 screw. If you make a thermometer medical device, there's an exact standard how a thermometer electrical has to look like. You just work your way through the standard, and that's the minimum. And of course, your developers have to know the standard. That's the basic knowledge. Then, of course, they have to be good and do the inventions. So there's no choice in the balance between skill and difficulty. To lower the difficulty, just forget it. You have to raise the skill of the people to get in balance. And of course, the feeling of control. Characteristic for flow is the feeling of a heightened control over one's actions. I have a weird picture in mind. Yeah, do you know the steering committee? Yeah, where all the leading people do the steering. That often reminds me to the kindergarten carousel on a Volksfest, where you have the firefighters with 7 steering wheels and everybody's steering. So that's steering committee, the feeling of control. No, that's fun. But we have the word control also in the MDR, and we have design control. So in German, control is often mistaken as Kontrolle, to check something. But that's not the meaning of control. The meaning of control is making decisions beforehand, leading design. So who's leading design? The design lead is leading design, not regulatory. The design lead is knowing how he wants his design. The design lead makes the decisions how to prove that the design is right. Yeah? So it's very important in development that the development knows how to develop a proper medical product. Yeah? It's nothing you can give to regulatory and say, oh, I'm doing my development, and then you come later on and check what I've done. That's not the meaning of control. And this meaning of control will never make you happy. You're only happy with control if you're in the driver's seat and if you have the control of your development. Also, a point of flow is effortlessness. Let's look what Mika says. Flow involves flexibility and ease. Everything works harmoniously and effortlessly. The activity runs smoothly, guided by our inner logic. So that's clear what he says. If you look at your body and you do skiing and everything just works together. How can we transfer this to an organization? A smooth, guided by an inner logic. That's really shouting out for a QMS. But a quality management system that's guided from an inner logic, guided by the people who do the work, not an external QMS where somebody comes from outside and says you have to do things like this and this and this. It's an inner logic. So you do things right and write down how you do it right. And this has to be aligned with MDR. If it's not aligned, do it differently. If it's aligned, continue doing it, do it the way you do it, and it's right. But it has to be an inner logic. And that's a good QMS system, an inner logic, which is familiar to the people who work with this inner logic. And if you really can work with the inner logic, you are happy with what you're doing because you know why you're doing it and you're convinced with your QMS. I like this one especially. That's melting together of action and consciousness. That's what flow means. Complete involvement creates a state in which there is no room for worry, fear, distraction, self-consciousness. Ruminate. Performers do not feel separated from their action. They are one with their performance. So we have action and we have consciousness about the action. And how do we transfer this on an organization? Action is the people doing things. But what's the consciousness of an organization about what people are doing? That's the immediate documentation. And what flow says, this has to melt together. This has to be one action. The doing and document what you have done. Because only if you have documented what you have done, it's consciousness. It's the consciousness of the company, of your corporation. It's not possible that you can take all the brains of all the people and connect this via electronic tool and bring it to a higher level. Yeah? We're not the Borgs, not yet, maybe 10 years from now. But we still have to write things down to generate a common consciousness of what the company thinks about their actions. And the best way to do is really the one who does the action writes down what he has done in one action, not separate from each other, not delegated to a secretary, not delegated to a regulatory department. The one who's doing the test is documenting the test. The one who's doing a validation is documenting the validation. Yeah? Then you have a melting of action and consciousness. An altered perception of time. We have some minutes to go, so one little detour. You often experience that everybody has the time to discuss why not to do things. Yeah? That seems a completely different perception of time. You have groups of people and they stand there discussing for hours. Why we don't want to do this. That's too time consuming. Yeah? And the discussion goes on for hours and sometimes days and sometimes weeks, how to avoid doing something. And nobody will realize it. That's taking time. And the real action would just happen within minutes or hours. Yeah? But it feels so, it feels like weeks if you do this test. Yeah? It's so much easier if you discuss it for weeks. Just try and get rid of this time misperception, yeah, and do what you have to do. In the end, what makes up flow and how do we transfer this to MDR? Flow is the autotelic quality of flow experience, and that is in the immediate response. From Greek, auto, self, and telos, goal. So it's a self-fulfilling, the goal is part of the action. You do something, you get the reward. Okay, that's very difficult with MDR. Not like we feel at the moment. We do a lot of things, then we might talk to the notified body and we're afraid we get some feedbacks in weeks or months or maybe in half a year. Some notified bodies don't even talk to us. So how do we get around this? How do we get immediate return? Yeah? If we follow the 7 points before that, yeah, keep in mind Wouldn't it be nice if you stand up in the morning under the shower and you know, I have my goals, safety and effectiveness. That's what I want to do. I have dedicated people with the right skills. Yeah, I'm in control of my design. I know what I do. And my whole organization is guided by a good inner logic. Yeah, and I know action and corporate consciousness is melted together. And that's a good feeling if you start your day this way, and any time of the day some audition might happen and you can explain what you do according to your inner logic. And then you feel happy because you know what I do is a good medical product, it's safe, it's effective, I know what I do, I have a good feeling. And that's your return of investment day to day through your medical device development. Yeah, that's as much fun as it can get. And then hopefully it feels like skiing in the sun again when you did the steps to this. So thank you very much. If you have some questions, I think we have 1 more minute or so to go, 4 minutes.
Exactly. Thank you so much. But because of the current situation, we would like to ask you if you have a question to come directly to Dr. Kluge, yeah, or of course to Ms. Elena Krawzow. Please, one applause for their presentation. Thank you so much.